Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and I thought I would sit down and do a video for you guys and gals. Get a sip of my water, get my radio voice going. Alright, I'm going to make a positive video about Alex today. You know what? Because he's right. You know, and someone said this to me and then someone linked it to me. And at first I kind of gave a trite response, tongue-in-cheek response about, well, you know, if he uses enough gear, he can make it work. Because they said, oh, he's going to go full vegan. But you know what? That is actually not an appropriate response because it's not actually true. Okay? I have made videos saying that a person could go full plant-based, and if they're intelligent, their gains will not suffer. But it just requires some extra care on their part. And I can't take a statement like that back and then make that sort of trite response. That actually isn't fair. It's not. So I went and actually listened because someone sent me it with a timestamp about his point about whole foods, plant-based. And here's the thing. If we are going to be intellectually honest and not have our biases, it doesn't matter whatever history there is back and forth between he and I. And actually, all of my current negative history with him is because of who he associates with. That's it. That's it. I don't have any other problems with him. And I think he should admit that that's fair, right? People who have literally made a career out of slandering me. You know, of course I'm not going to like him associating with them. Who just straight up lie about me nonstop. So that aside, I need to put that bias aside and put even aside my own cultural biases as a Texan who spent quite a few years on a cattle ranch. I love steak. If we are going to be objective, he made some statements, and he's actually right. If we look at the sum total of the scientific research, and I even admit my own experiences, because I'm mostly plant-based right now, okay? I mean, I've told people that. I'm like 85-90% plant-based in my diet. And I was doing that at least 80% during that lean bulk when I did a 365 pause bench, all that stuff last year. That's how I was eating. My diet was actually very fruit heavy with animal proteins thrown in, but they weren't always massive amounts like you would think. I mean, sometimes they were, sometimes they weren't. It was mostly plant-based and mostly whole foods. He made some points. And when it comes to health, because it's not about your gains always, we could talk about recovery, but if we are going to talk about health, the overwhelming majority of the literature has consistently showed over time things like inflammatory markers, oxidative stress, even longevity is enhanced when we moderate things like saturated fat, when we moderate refined sugars, and eating largely plant-based. Okay. Look at all the data on the blue zones. And notice I am not in any way telling people to go vegan. I'm not saying a person has to eat 100% plant-based, and I don't think that's what he was implying either. Okay? And I want to be clear there, and I'm not making any sort of case for ethical veganism because I just don't believe in it. But if we are talking purely health, and we are being objective and honest about it, and setting aside all of our personal biases about how we feel about people, how you feel about me, how I feel about who Alex hangs with, and we just look at the data. Honestly, look at all the data. We have to admit that it's true, because that is what the data shows. And this is over numerous countries. Like, this is not big agriculture telling you this, which is an insane conspiracy theory. All right? Longest lived people eat mostly whole foods, mostly plants. The overwhelming majority of their diet from plants. They eat relatively low fat. In some cases, some of those cultures add some extra healthy fats and stuff in. They do, you know. Some of them add olive oil and things. But that doesn't seem to increase the longevity over the people who don't. But it seems to work in their favor. There is no upper threshold to fruit and vegetable intake as far as the health benefits go. From eating plants, the data, and this is what the best experts will say, a lot of the health benefits, the anti-cancer benefits, the oxidative stress, there isn't an upper threshold. Meaning, when we come down to it saying, well, if I just eat whatever 80%, 60%, 70% of my calories this way. There's no benefits to adding a little more. No, that doesn't seem to be the case. There doesn't appear to be an upper threshold. Could we argue about diminished returns? Sure. But even when you look at some of the entirely, almost mostly plant-based diets, stuff like the Ornish diet that's actually been studied to some extent, a lot of cases of reversing cardiovascular disease. You're talking about a whole foods, plant-based, 10% of your diet coming from fat. It's a whole foods, plant-based diet, and it's been pretty successful there. Those sort of diets have been successful reversing diabetes, just lowering overall inflammatory markers in the body. The data is there. The history is there. Okay? And so when Alex makes these statements, and, I want to jump up and go, oh, I like steak. I'm a Texan, or whatever. That's not being honest. And I appreciate the fact that he made a case. He's like, look, dude, I'm Mediterranean. There's certain foods I like to eat. And I think that's where there's a mutual agreement. Look, we all have our biases. We all have our tastes. We have our cultural preferences. We have our point of cultural reference. But that doesn't impact what the data shows. So when he says he's going to do mostly plant-based like that, or almost entirely plant-based, with potential health benefits, I can't say that he's wrong, because he's not wrong. And that's the point I would make to the people listening. You can deny it and say, well, I'm going to do whatever, and that's fine. No one's telling you what you have to do, because I'm not interested in any sort of ethical veganism. We're talking purely from a health perspective, and it's up to you to determine where your health lay. That is your own personal responsibility. Okay? Not my responsibility. Those are personal choices. But do I think that someone who has a solid knowledge of nutrition could pull it off entirely plant-based? Sure. And even allowing cheat days. Like, even for me, I've thought about doing it. And I very well may do it to where I try it for a little while, just to see kind of how it goes, as I know enough about nutrition. But I'm not talking about people who are like, oh, I can never touch these foods. No, you get to a social gathering or a party or a family get together, you eat what they're serving. Because it's not going to matter, because we're not talking about a moral religious code because you're some vegan or something. We're talking about being interested in your health, and a few cheat days a year has never killed anybody. Okay, you're not going to see negatives to your health from having 3, 4, 5, 6 cheat days a year, 1 cheat day a month. Not going to matter. Okay, so when we look at it from that perspective, and you look at what he said in that live stream, he's right, and I cannot fault his logic. And I think the sum total of the data is in agreement. Okay. So since someone brought it to my attention, I am covering some stuff with current events. I'm also willing to say, look, whatever beefs or he and I may or may not have is irrelevant on this topic. Because if we're going to discuss truth and what facts are and what verifiable data shows, those things can't matter. Okay, they can't. So again, I'm going to state, for the record, he is scientifically and medically accurate in those statements, based upon my knowledge and understanding of the data. Okay. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative. I'll talk to you guys next time.